Welcome back to the next section of Traefik Training. In this section where it's all about HTTPS, TLS, and Let's Encrypt. So how can we manage certificates, or we let Traefik and Let's Encrypt generate the certificates and manage the certificates for us. Let's take a look at the section, shall we? So in this section, it's all about encryption and how we're actually going to manage the certificate. So Traefik by default, if no certificate is found or Let's Encrypt certificate, it actually generates its own certificate and it self-signs this certificate. So at least you have some certificate in place. Now, if you open up a website or your browser and you go to HTTPS, your application name, you'll get some sort of error from your browser saying it's not a safe connection because it's self-signed. Now, the next step is user-defined. User-defined is you have your own certificates. Your company provides you, or you're creating your own certificates, and you can actually put the certificates into Traefik, and you tell Traefik exactly where to mount these certificates. And then when the entry point matches the certificate, it then assigns the certificate to the entry point. Now, Traefik does a lot of the matching for us, so we don't have to do a lot of configurations. We essentially just install the certificate, and then Traefik is doing all the matching of the entry point to the certificate. The final method is automated, which I'm the fan of, and Traefik in combination with Let's Encrypt generates the certificates for us automatically on a per request basis. So this is what I really like. Now, it doesn't meet all use cases because sometimes a company requires that you have your own certificate from some global CA. But if you're using it for testing, or if you don't have this requirement, I really recommend using Traefik with Let's Encrypt, because then all the certificates are handled by Traefik and Let's Encrypt. It generates certificate for us, it handles all the expirations, it rotates certificates on a relatively frequent basis. It's just really nice. It handles a lot of the admin for us. Now, in the dashboard of Traefik, it's going to be looking a bit different now that we're enabling TLS on our connection. And now you see the TLS, we have like a little shield command, and it means that we have TLS on our router. That means any connection coming into my domain here, WebWrench, will actually be encrypted and provided a certificate back to this user, whoever visits my website. Now, additionally, if we zoom in a bit, you can see the status still remains the same, TLS, but then we're also using the Entrypoint Web Secure, because Web Secure is port 443. So we need to ensure that we're serving the traffic back in 443, so it's actually the correct port. Now, the other screen we're going to look at in the dashboard is when we look at the router itself, you can see the TLS is actually enabled. You see true, entry point is web secure, service is cat app, things we've seen before, but now we see TLS is true, and the certificate resolver. So we actually define this in our configuration, and we'll run through this in the lab exactly how to set each resolver up and the different possibilities. So we'll see that also further in the lab. Now, TLS user defined, we can actually add our certificates to the dynamic configuration of Traefik using the file provider. So that creates a separate file configuration, which we can then install our TLS certificates in there, so that it's dynamically updated if you ever want to change your certificates. Or you can put it in the static configuration. It all depends on how often you're changing certificates or how many certificates you have. It's probably best practice to put it in dynamic configuration just for the fact that you don't have to restart Traefik every time you do any changes. Now, in the TLS user defined, as I mentioned previously, it's bring your own certificates. So any CA certificate you have or certificates you've generated yourself, you install your own and manage your own certificates. So you have to make sure you change the certificates when they expire, etc. Now, Traefik actually automatically does the matching, as I mentioned previously, from the entry point to the certificate. So for example, whoami.com, if it matches the certificate and the entry point, it automatically serves the certificate to this domain. And finally, the TLS configurations. In user defined, you have a lot more configurations where you can actually define exactly what TLS version, the timeouts, and all the different ciphers and different things like this. So you can really get fine-grained details on the configuration. Now, what does it look like within the configuration itself? We'd actually define TLS. We'd create a certificates entry, And basically you just add the cert file and the key file. So you just map these files that's available in the container, and then automatically Traefik does all the rest. So you don't have to do anything on the service side. You just have to install the certificate, and then Traefik then tries to match the certificate all the time. Now Let's Encrypt is a different possibility, and this is the automated way to do TLS. So Let's Encrypt validates the control that you actually own this domain by these separate challenges. And the challenges are HTTP challenge, DNS challenge, and TLS challenge. And the difference is HTTP challenge is essentially the Let's Encrypt provides a token to Traefik, and then Traefik provides a URL back. You can see your domain.well-known Acme challenge. So some sort of known challenge URL specific to Let's Encrypt, and finally the token on the end. So Let's Encrypt reads this. If it's available, then it says, okay, you are indeed the owner of this domain. We'll provide you a certificate. The second one is DNS challenge, and this is something I probably like the most because it's the most automated. And what happens is you use your DNS provider, whatever it is. There's a huge list, and we'll see this list in the lab. And I mean, Amazon, Azure, DigitalOcean, Gandhi. I mean, you just go down the DNS list. There's a ton of DNS providers. And essentially, we use the API from the DNS provider to place a DNS text record in the domain record. And then automatically Let's Encrypt looks at this text record, says, oh, you are indeed the owner, and it validates the certificate. And this also helps with wildcard certificates, etc., and it makes it very easy. And the final challenge is TLS challenge. And basically it does a handshake between Traefik and Let's Encrypt, port 443, verifies everything, and it just handles it at the TLS layer of the encryption. What does the workflow look like? We have Traefik over here. It then sends a request to Let's Encrypt. Let's Encrypt says, okay, comes back. Then it puts the certificate, Traefik then puts the certificate on our domain, and then the domain is constantly being validated against Let's Encrypt. So if it's getting to an expiration point or anything like this, then it refreshes the domain. Now, we're going to cover all this in the lab, and we're going to go into details on the Let's Encrypt portion. Join me in the next section as we really enable HTTPS TLS on our CAT app with the different Let's Encrypt challenges. So we'll cover HTTP, TLS, and DNS in the lab. Join me next in the lab.